Professor Adams is cutting a very wide swath here at BYU. His work and that of the students he supervises is garnering considerable national acclaim and broad international attention. Professor Adams earned a Bachelor of University Studies degree in Environmental Design from the University of Utah in 1982, where he also earned a Master's of Fine Arts in Computer Graphics in 1992. Before joining the faculty here at BYU, he worked with Sharp, Sorensen and Associates Architects in Salt Lake City, and was a partner in the firm of Adams and Nino, which specializes in developing software for architects. Further development of creative software led him to become a partner in the Pre-Arc Design Lab, where he worked on software used in design presentations, in marketing, and in computer-generated animation. Among other design projects on which he has worked, he has been retained as a consultant with the Coleman Company on the design of improved coolers for campers. At BYU, he is currently Professor of Industrial Design and has worked on some very interesting projects about which we shall hear today. In addition to publishing a number of peer-reviewed articles and mentoring students in all manner of software development, Professor Adams has been executive producer, professor, and student mentor on several cartoon projects, including 3 separate CG animation films, Faux Pas, Lemmings, and Pet Shop, which have won student Emmy Awards in recognition of their outstanding quality. In addition, Lemmings has also won a Student Academy Award. We are most delighted to have such an accomplished speaker with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor R. Brent Adams.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. That's why I always start out with my presentation thanks, because I think that's maybe the most important thing that I want you to get out of this is how grateful that I am for the opportunity I have at BYU and to work with such great students and administrators on campus. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to have a question and answer period when we're done. And if you don't get the questions right, I get to give the presentation again. So the topic of the lecture is, what's BYU doing making cartoons? I get asked that a lot. In fact, I ask myself that a lot. Why are we making cartoons? In reality, that's not the main focus of what we're doing. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about the state of the entertainment industry. So in the United States, Finding Nemo in 2003 sold 28 million copies on DVD. Shrek 2, 20 million copies. Consumers spent a record $21 billion renting and buying DVDs in 2004. And DVD retail sales grew to $15 billion in 2004. So it's a huge industry. Shrek 2 made $500 million in US ticket sales, $500 million worldwide ticket sales, and $500 million in DVD. So Shrek 2 made a lot of money. It takes about $120 million to make the movie, so it's a huge thing. So my generation, sports figures that I looked up to, this was the icon. If you got on the cover of a Wheaties box, that was a big deal. So what's our sports icons today? Where are they found? EA Sports, okay? They're on some computer game. That is how the industry's changed. That's how society's changed. That's the impact of the entertainment industry on society. So there's a game company called EA, Electronic Arts. One of the divisions is EA Sports. This list on the screen is the leaders in market capitalization in software companies. You'll notice that Electronic Arts market capitalization is $15 billion, or the 5th largest software company in the United States. EA Sports made $1.5 billion on their soccer game. They made $1.5 billion on their football game. Okay. The process to generate movies and games is constantly changing. It's changing a lot. And the entertainment industry, when I'm talking to them, explains to me that more and more they're expecting people to be able to use both sides of their brain. If you talk to Disney Feature Animation, They want to hire either an artist that can write software code, or they want to hire a computer science major that can draw the human figure. So there's a movie being made right now at a company called Weta in New Zealand, and it's a remake of King Kong. And we actually have several former BYU students working on that project. And in the Wired magazine, October 2005, Naomi Watts was talking about how hard it is to make a movie, because it used to be when you made a movie, you had the other actors, you were on the set, the director would say, okay, this is your inspiration, this is what happens in this scene. Well, more and more what happens is the actors in front of some kind of just painted blue wall or painted green wall. There's no other actors around, there's no visual effects, there's no set, and they just have to act, they have to pretend that something's happening there. And director Peter Jackson, who is also the director of the Lord of the Rings movies, told Naomi Watts, you've got to get used to it. This is the future of filmmaking. So everything is changing. So here's some other changes. The film industry makes a major change every 25 to 30 years. Okay, first it was they brought sound, and then they brought color, and then they had widescreen. Okay, and then they had stereo sound and other kinds of things. The gaming industry obsoletes itself every 5 years because they come out with a new game console. And the cost to make those games increases dramatically. So the first generation PlayStation, the average game cost about $1 million to make. PlayStation 2, the average game was $3 to $5 million. The next generation, the Xbox 360, the next generation PlayStation 3, the average game, the budget for the game alone is average is about $15 million. In a conversation with a gentleman at Electronic Arts, EA Sports, he says that they're working on a game right now, and that game has a budget of $25 million. That does not count any of the marketing or any distribution. That is the budget to produce the game. So what are the jobs in the industry? Well, the interesting thing about the entertainment industry is there's a huge wide variety of jobs. There's jobs that require more of the pure art side, pure artists. They're doing character design, they're doing illustration, they're painting, all the way to very technical computer research. We've got to figure out the best way to do water, the best way to do smoke. There's a lot of jobs in between. And knowing that the jobs are there, open up a great opportunity for students and programs. What's the money to be made? Because those are questions that are asked a lot. Quite significant, actually. The average BFA degreed student about 7 years ago in the United States, according to one major research survey, the average BFA student, Bachelor of Fine Arts student in the United States, made $12,000 their first year out of school. And of that $12,000, $8,000 came from non-art related income. So that's probably hamburgers at Burger King or selling shoes, some Sears or someplace. Our average student in the animation program right now is probably starting right around $50,000. We've had students with Bachelors of Fine Arts degrees start in the industry near $90,000 a year to start. So the money is significant. Now, we're not chasing careers because of money. We're not chasing careers because maybe there's, necessary an opportunity there. But I think it's indicative of what the opportunities are and what the future is, and some other opportunities for students. So let me now talk about design and visualization at BYU. A few years ago, when I first started teaching at BYU in the design department, we had almost no equipment, and I was hired to basically be the faculty member that got the design department computerized. So we had photography, illustration, graphic design, industrial design. We had a couple of computers. One of the computers had 640K of RAM and a 20 meg hard drive. We just didn't have very much equipment. And so I actually went around to a lot of faculty on campus here and to try and find out if there was any access for our students to any equipment, and of course there was very little access anywhere else because they didn't have much equipment either. So Doug Shabrias, who was at the time was the vice president of technology on campus, helped me understand that AT&T had a hardware donation program. But the problem is you had to either be a science or engineering program to apply. Well, I called up AT&T, told them we were an art department / design department, told them I would like to apply, and they said, sorry, you know, that's policy. Well, I thought, no, we should apply anyway. So I filled out all the application. I put together a huge document explaining why the design department at BYU needed to be included in this donor program. And they called me up and they said, we received this proposal, we just wanted to let you know that you're not a science or engineering department, and so you don't qualify for the donation. Thanks for sending it anyway. And I said, well, it was worth the effort and it was worth the time, but you know, I just felt like I really should apply. Well, I got a phone call about a week later saying that they really enjoyed the application, and they were actually going to pass it on to the next level. And they weren't sure why, but they were passing on the next level. Well, to make a long story short, the design department was awarded a huge hardware donation. And it ended up to be the largest donation that AT&T ever gave an educational program. Why did they do that? I think some of us know why they may have done it. There's another hardware company that I can't name because they told me a long time ago they would sue me if I named them. I worked with the president of this hardware company. They did hardware and software. It was a 10,000 person company. And I'd met him at a conference, and I told him how bad we needed equipment in the design department at BYU so that we could do some 3D stuff and visualization stuff. And I explained to him that we really could use some of his hardware, and he said, well, we don't have any kind of donation program. That's policy in the company. We don't donate to schools. Well, he called me up about a month later, and he says, help me understand what you would do with some equipment if we gave it to you. So I kind of over the phone, told him what we'd do, and he says, well, I was just curious. And I ran into him at a conference about 6 months later, and we got talking again, and I told him I was going to fill out a big proposal, for equipment from him. And he says, well, we don't donate, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it anyway, knowing that I had been encouraged by AT&T, and I'd heard this before. So he put this proposal together, and I really felt, it's one of those things that, I really felt you should do this, you should do this. So I put together a proposal. They donated about $3 million worth of hardware and software to BYU. So I put together a big thank you letter. I put together a big press release. I send it to him. I says, this is what we would like to publicize as kind of a thank you. I got a phone call back from their legal department telling me that they would sue me if I did any kind of press release announcing that they had donated to us. And I said, how come? And they says, well, we have a policy against donations, and we don't want any other school to be asking us for equipment. So you just absolutely cannot publicize that you received this donation. And so I called the president back of this company. I said, so why'd you donate? He said, I don't know, it just felt right. So I think that starts to be an indicator of some of the history, some of the reasons why I was encouraged to continue pursuing what we were doing. So I used this equipment, and I started teaching some classes in animation and other kinds of things in addition to other classes. And one of the students who worked on this equipment, named Dan Lemon, he worked on an animation I'm going to show you in a minute, and that animation allowed him to get hired on at the company that did Titanic. So Digital Domain's the company he worked for. Recently they've done How the Grinch Stole Christmas. They did iRobot. Well, I was at a conference with one of the executives of Digital Domain, and he was talking to the technical editor for the LA Times. And she told me that they had just been talking about this student of mine, Dan Lemon, and that this vice president of Digital Domain told her that Dan Lemon was the smartest employee that they had at Digital Domain. Now, this was the first year Dan worked there. He only had a bachelor's degree in industrial design. But that's some of the impact that we're starting to make. So he and another student, Matt Paulson, spearheaded an animation called The Brief Social Life of Henry Wickham, which won first place in probably the most prestigious computer animation contest for students at the time. So if you want to play Henry Wickham, we'll see how this goes. This was done about 9 years.
So headstrong. Well, if anyone knows what I'm talking about, you do. Am I right? Oh. Anyway, I said to the chap, Pumbaa, I believe that's what his name was. I said, let me have a ride on the elephant. Let me take the reins of the elephant. And he wouldn't let me. I mean, it was my safari. I'm paying for it. I should be able to drive the darn thing, don't you think? Well, I do. Everyone is headstrong. A natural consequence of poor education. I tried to open the little fellow's mind with a discussion. I said to him, I said, you know, Nietzsche said, if you're looking into an abyss, the abyss is also looking into you. Now, how can you be looking into an abyss that's also looking into you? Well, Jean-Paul Sartre, of course, had a similar view with the existence of God not really existing, if you want to put it that way, which I do. Now Nietzsche and Sartre, if you put the two together, well, I guess you would get an abyss that doesn't really exist looking back at you. What I was saying to Clara. You know, we really should have you over sometime. Oh, Clara would love that. Chef Pierre, he is truly exceptional. He is trained in the
And I was stuck
so well
there, and I
because
thought,
every
hey,
Studebaker comes with
what am I doing
air
so high up here?
So by today's standard, it's pretty lame. The animation's pretty lame. But at the time, it was very difficult. It was done with software that was difficult to use. We had very few computers. Luckily, we had the donations and some donated software. But what we realized was that there's an opportunity if you work hard and if you try and do things that are difficult to do, then that starts to separate you away from the competition. And it's one of those mentoring opportunities where we realize that the harder it is, the better it is, because that means that competition is gone. So the hard things become your friend if you're willing to work, past the difficulties. Well, what was difficult about this is at the time, not very many people were doing much with human character animation, and you can see why. But we did some things. Okay, the thing to understand, and the comparison is that industry quality animation or special effects on average costs about $1 million a minute. So if you look at Toy Story, if you look at Finding Nemo, if you look at Shrek, those are actually usually more than $1 million a minute. There's some more inexpensive one like Ice Age was a little less than $1 million a minute. A lot of the Star Wars shots are over $2 million a minute. And so that's kind of the expectation. And I found that our animations are judged against the industry just because that's what they're used to seeing. That's what people who go to film festivals, they're used to seeing that quality, and that's what we're judged against. We don't have $1 million a minute to work on our projects, by the way. Well, what happened was that in the design department, they've merged the design and visual arts departments together. About the same time that the industry was saying we need more technology from the industrial design program. So we were designing cars and boats and motors. We were doing some of this animation, and the industry kept saying you need more technology, you need more access to milling machines, you need more access to computers and software. And so we looked around and we noticed that there was an opportunity in the College of Engineering that would house the industrial design program. And I was heavily involved as a professor in industrial design. So luckily, Doug Shabrias, who had been the vice president of technology to help us get the AT&T donation, he was now the dean of engineering. So Doug Shabrias and Richard Christiansen, who was associate dean, worked really hard to help us find a home in the College of Engineering and Industrial Design. Well, to this day, as far as we know, we're the only, BYU is the only university that offers a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree inside of a College of Engineering, but the industry loves it. When we did that, we added an emphasis of automotive design and digital design to industrial design because there was such a need. Well, the other thing that happened that a lot of people will say it was coincidence, I say it was about as much coincidence as AT&T giving us a donation and the other hardware company giving us a donation, is that we hooked up with Ira Fulton as a donor. And he agreed to give BYU a supercomputer. Well, there's some things about the supercomputer a lot of people don't know. One of the things is when we worked with the vendor kept telling us that we were buying too much memory. We were buying too big of a supercomputer because it basically was the first supercomputer at BYU. And other universities had similar sized supercomputers, but they had had them for 8 or 9 years. And they actually called me up and they said, we just wanted to go on record. We think that BYU is buying too big of a supercomputer. Now, when was the last time you had a salesman tell you that you were buying too much from them? Okay. So that let you know, though, they were really concerned that we were going to get this piece of equipment and that we wouldn't utilize it and that we would maybe then speak negatively of that company. And they wanted to go on record that they thought it was too big of a purchase. So we purchased the supercomputer. 3 weeks after it came, and we'd been working on it. Ira Fulton came back to check on how we were doing. And the computer was completely, the processors and memory were all completely being used. He thought that the animation students then had got their hands on it and taken over the whole machine, and I let him know that we weren't rendering and it was being done by other people on campus, which had him, he decided, well, we're going to need to expand, and we immediately started to expand that system. Well, some of the things that we were doing early on in the supercomputer was we were creating these three-dimensional environments and we were walking around them. And we also had a virtual reality theater created, and so you could put on 3D glasses and with a joystick walk around in these environments. The student who worked on this has his name in the credits of Lemony Snicket as well as Episode 3 Star Wars. We're also doing some visualizations, so we built Herod's Temple and we walked around Herod's Temple. We were doing just some pure visualizations of things. This is done with some software that Pixar donated to us. We were working with some of the major boat companies, and we would build 3D computer models of the boat and spin them around inside the virtual reality theater. Some work with Coleman. This is some work we did with General Motors on some visualizations of, next generation Camaro. Because of the supercomputer, the virtual reality theater, some of the other things that we were doing, General Motors, EDS, and Sun Microsystems donated over $300 million to campus. This was, at the time, about the 5th largest single donation that any university had received from anybody in terms of dollar amounts. So you can see the growth of the opportunities, and it's hard to deny the impact. It's hard to deny someone's hand in softening the hearts and minds of some of these individuals for them to open up their pockets so that we could do things. So when we had this digital design major, the students in industrial design in this major created an animation called Lemmings. So we did Lemmings. Lemmings won a Student Academy Award. It won a Student Emmy. One of the things we try and do when we create these animations is try and figure out our own look and feel. We try and avoid, kind of the Toy Story look. Well, one of the things that was hard on this thing was the original story idea had 4 lemmings, and Cliff, who's, that's why I brought him. Okay, he's my comfort level here. Cliff was going to try and stop his 3 friends from this migration, and so we only had 4. But we decided, any other school can do that. We now have a supercomputer. We have millions of dollars worth of donated software. Let's do something that's hard. Let's do something competition can't do. So we then thought, well, let's put in 50. And so we started writing some code. We could have 50 migrating, flocking lemmings. And then we're kind of talking about it. Well, at the same time, I'm reading the Book of Mormon, right? There's 2,000 stripling lemmings in our thing. And so we talked about it. That's hard. We did it. The industry went crazy. Disney Television called me and asked me if they could use our characters to host Disney Playhouse. It ended up not happening because they wanted us to do all of the animations for every week and all that stuff. And I tried to explain that no, we only have like 18 students. We can't do this. Tom Sita, who is the president of the Animators Union, tried to talk me into submitting it to the regular Academy Awards. He also teaches at USC and UCLA, and he says they aren't doing anything like that at those other schools. Lemmings has played in festivals around the world. If anybody flew on Frontier Airlines in the month of September, Lemmings played as part of the in-flight movie entertainment, and it played to about 750,000 people. So let's talk quickly about the Student Emmys. The Student Emmys has 2 categories with 3 winners in each category. There's a traditional animation and there's a computer-generated animation. So in the last 2 years, they've given 12 awards. BYU has won 3 of those, so we've won 1/4 of the Student Emmys given out over the last 2 years. And on that bottom line is kind of an indicator of how hard this is and what the competition is. They had 415 entries from 139 schools from 38 states. So you subtract our 3 out, that leaves 9 left for all the other schools, okay? The students who worked on that movie, so it was done 2 years ago, have gone to work on Garfield, Scooby, Episode 3, on and on and on, King Kong, Tiger Woods Golf. I mean, to go from being an undergraduate student at BYU to work on these movies and have their name in the credit of those movies in 2 years is actually quite phenomenal, because most movie studios, their policy, unwritten policy, is that they don't hire students straight out of school. You got to go somewhere else first and work. Okay. Marshall Canlon is a good example of one of the students who worked on that. He got 3 job offers in 3 days. He was offered a job to work on iRobot. He was offered a job to work on Garfield at a different studio. He said, no, I really want to work on Episode 3. But what really convinced him is because 2 of those studios in Los Angeles, one of the studios in San Francisco, he's single. So he went and visited the singles wards in those 2 areas and chose San Francisco. Okay. Tom Makoto is working on King Kong in New Zealand, and he emailed me last week, and he said that he just got hired on at Sony, so he starts at Sony Pictures because King Kong's finished, so he starts at Sony in January. But on his demo reel, he had some of the Lemming stuff on there, and even though he's got all this work from King Kong and some stuff at a place he did in Australia, they wanted to talk to him about his Lemming stuff, and they just couldn't believe that work like that was done by students. And so he emailed me and said they didn't care about King Kong, they didn't care about the other stuff, they only wanted to talk to me about Lemmings. So we now have an animation major approved on campus. It's multidisciplinary. It's across 2 colleges, College of Fine Arts, the College of Engineering. It's pretty amazing. So then we created an animation called Pet Shop. So let's play Pet Shop.
Go take a look around. Hi, I'm looking for something for my son.
Did you have anything in mind?
Well, I'm not a lemming. We've had trouble with those.
Okay, how's about just over here? I think we got some nice
Just pick one, Billy.
I want the chinchilla.
Here you go.
He's cute.
He's gonna be my best friend. He totally beat up the lizard. Should have seen it.
So that's one stuff that's playing all around the world. It plays in 2 weeks in Madrid, Spain. It won Best Foreign Short Film in Kawasaki, Japan. So this is some of the space and why we're grateful for donors and the university. It was 1/3 files that we generated to create Pet Shop. So we were doing this painterly effect. We were creating all this stuff. There's some of the hard things. A lot of drawing, a lot of computer science stuff. Students have gone on and done some great stuff. So we also were working on an animation called Faux Pas, which also won an Emmy. And this is a public service announcement that we did for Michael Levitt and Jackie Levitt. Michael Levitt is the Secretary of Health and Human Services right now. And if you go to ikeepsafe.org, you can watch it there. There's some money, or there's a proposal to the Appropriations Committee to see if they can get funding to put a copy of it in every elementary school in the United States. So we're working on a project right now called Noggin. It'll be done in a month. Some of the students who have worked on it are already hired. In fact, most of them are. A lot of them were hired by Avalanche Software, which is a division of Disney Games. And Alex Cannon, who's the director of it, was just hired last week to work on Spider-Man 3. So it's a story about myths that were prevalent during the time of Shakespeare, about some creatures that had their faces on their stomach instead of their head. So the inspiration on this one, what was hard, is to try and make it look like old illustrated field books. So this is actually a 3D computer model that one of the graduate students in computer science created for us. So a lot of the work on this is part computer science, part animation students, and we try and do a lot of it. So I've got just a couple of clips. There's no audio on this thing because it's not done yet. So if you think of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that's kind of the story, right? You're different, and so you get mocked because you're different. And some of the conflict. So here they are mocking him. And things happen. So Noggin is the creature with the head. Things happen to him. He hits his head all the time. He creates problems for him. They're out hunting deer, and he scares the deer away because he has a head. So they launch a scheme, and they go, you know, we can fix this if we paint a belly on his stomach and we cut his head off. Then he's going to be like one of us, and we won't mock him anymore. And so they get ready to help. This is a comedy, okay, even though it doesn't look like it. This is a comedy. And they get ready to help him alleviate his problem of that thing that's always in the way. So this is about a month from being finished, and we'll see where that goes. Okay, so that's Noggin. So here's some of we're working on an animation right now, the senior group, called Pinata. We just finished one called Turtles, and you'll notice that the look and feel is different. We're working with the theater department on one called Der Ostwind, and it has a completely different look to it. So how's our animation major perceived? Well, we're on the list of schools to hire from. Vern Wilbert is CG supervisor at Digital Domain. Digital Domain did a demo reel for me of all their work, and then the president of Digital Domain called me up and he said, I'm really embarrassed because I just saw a cut of this demo reel, and I'm really offended. And I says, what are you offended about? He says, we put some of our beer commercials on it. And I says, that's okay. He says, but we made that demo tape just for BYU so we could show some of the work, and I told him not to put anything on there that would offend anybody at BYU. Okay. One last story. I asked a head of HR at one of the studios what we should do so they would keep hiring our students. She said, make your students take religion classes. She says, the industry attracts a lot of creeps, and we like your students. So what's the future? Well, there's a lot of students out there that are now owners of computer game companies. They're overseeing facilities at movie studios. I thought we would get in these animations, and in the long term we might be able to make impact on society. We might be able to tell better stories. We might be able to do product we're proud of, but I thought it'd be years and years and years. Mike Warner was one of the students who was an animator on both Pet Shop and Lemmings. And he has now signed a deal. He is directing a feature-length animation, and he only graduated a year and a half ago from BYU. It's his own story, and he gets to direct it. So my advice is do something hard. Work really hard. Back to the question, what's BYU doing making cartoons? Well, I hope some way, somehow, as we send students out into this industry, that we can make an impact. I was asked early on when we tried to create the major why we would do it. And my response was that my kids watch movies. My kids play computer games. And if we aren't doing something in that industry, because the industry is not inherently wrong, but if we're not doing something to put our students into that industry so that we can create alternative, then how do we complain? Because our kids still will watch movies and they still will do computer games. And I think that's why I'm passionate about what we're doing at BYU, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity we have to do it. I'm grateful for the administrators, I'm grateful for the deans, the department chairmen, everybody involved, especially, the donors, but really especially the students who work so hard. So that's why we're doing cartoons at BYU.